Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Passive Tree Podcast, a podcast dedicated talking about Path of Exile 2, life, and everything in between. I'm your host, Blazeworks TV, and today on this third episode, we have Lexd. Welcome on, and how the heck are you doing, man?
Hey, I'm good. Again, I'm glad we finally set this all up. It seems to be running smoothly, kind of Frankenstein monster the stream together, mostly on my end, but it's working.
What do you mean? We just started the stream and it all just worked perfectly. That's
Yeah,
that's the beauty
I'm
of it.
kidding. We didn't none of that happened. No, it's just no.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on today. I really appreciate you helping me
Yeah.
solve some technical issues with the podcast. So,
Oh yeah.
props to you, my friend. All
Oh
right,
yeah,
so
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
yeah, dude. So yeah, we got a lot to talk about today. What I like to do at the beginning of a podcast, just to get to know you a little bit better, is ask you a little bit of a few personal questions. So the first one I want to get out of the way is describe to me your first foray into gaming. Was it console as a kid? Was it PC? Let me hear about that.
That's such a good question. I love that question. So my first foray into it, I remember it fondly, was when I was a kid, my dad one Christmas, I forget what year it was. I was before 10 years old, I think, but he bought us a Super Nintendo system with the game Donkey Kong Country. And that was like such a good first experience for a game because that game, like, even to this day, I would say holds up in some ways because it was like that game, it was really fun and it was like challenging enough at the time, but like it was also the music was incredible and the art style was really cool. And I was like, oh my God, why are all these things here at once? This is so bizarre to me. And that it just from that moment on, I was like probably fully addicted. You know, I wonder how much my dad regrets buying that that Christmas, that fateful day. But from then on, I was just I was hooked. I was hooked.
That's incredible. Okay, so I have to mention this. You said music, so I don't know if this particular song is in Donkey Kong Country or the second game, but Aquatic Ambience. That song goes so hard.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the
Uh,
first one. That's the first one. All the first underwater level you get to, even I think, is when that plays. I think it might play for every underwater level, but that one, it's funny. There's a DJ. His name is Daniel Avery. He actually samples that tune. I'll have to link it to you later. He samples that, and it's very subtle. It's not like so obvious. We're like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah. We all like aquatic ambience, but it's subtle, and you hear the notes, and it's like, oh, there's like a glimmer of a memory when I heard that tune, and I was like, that makes me want to play Donkey Kong.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I'm a huge
Yeah.
nerd, and one of my biggest nerdy things about me is that I listen to a lot of video game music. So I have a whole like
Mhm.
Spotify playlist of just like
Oh yeah.
various things that
Yeah.
are on Spotify. So yeah, man, big fan of that. So
Mhm.
moving on from Super Nintendo, was there sort of a moment where gaming transitioned for you from console to computer games?
Ah, man. You know, I feel like yeah, there's a few different transitions in my life, but I think there was a very obvious one. And this is going to sound funny. So there was one when I was also very young. I think I still was must have been around 10, like a little over 10, but we had exchange students stay with us very briefly when we were living in Virginia. And they're two Korean exchange students, and obviously, StarCraft is huge over there. They brought with them StarCraft. I remember seeing them play it on our computer, and I was just like, what is this? I was like, how are like the things you control that small? How are you building buildings? Like it was the first RTS I'd ever seen. I was like, this is like completely foreign to me because I was only playing console stuff at the time. So they would let me play StarCraft when they were like going to their classes and stuff. And that just further got me addicted to games. I was like, this is a whole new world. I was like totally like digging it. And I played it too much. I played it more than them probably to the point where when they were there and I was like watching them play, I would be telling them what to do. And they were just like, what is this kid doing? And before they left, I think they told my mom, they're like, this guy's like a genius. Like he's like really good at this game at this age. This is really weird. I was just like obsessed with it. So it's like really funny that was definitely where I started seeing the computer as like a gaming console. I was like, oh, I can play games on this. And they're like way more complex. And I can use a mouse and a keyboard that's like so different. I love it.
That's amazing. Yeah, we share very similar experiences. I didn't have a Korean exchange student come stay at my house, but I did have a stepdad who brought home a big box of video games for our
Yep.
computer, and one of those games was StarCraft and StarCraft Brood War, and then Diablo 2 as well. And that is really
Yeah.
when like gaming for me like also transitioned from like we had an N64 when I was a kid, and then
Yep.
that box just completely opened up this realm of like new possibilities on the computer. Blizzard Entertainment is like single-handedly responsible, in my opinion, for getting me addicted to video games. I played StarCraft online when I was like 10 years old, and I was like, it was just take me back to those days.
Well, yeah. So like StarCraft, I didn't actually play that online. I just love actually it had a really good story, honestly. I love playing the campaign. I played all the single player stuff. I love playing like basically, like comp stomps on my own essentially. But I eventually the first time I played online was with Warcraft 2. I like Warcraft 2 came out before StarCraft, but I like took a step back and played that game. Um I'll tell you one of the funniest memories I have of that is when I made my dad buy that game for me as like a gift. And he was like, "What? You should have a gift. What do you want?" We were in the store and I chose that game. He was hesitant because he saw this addiction growing, but he bought the game and we brought it back. And on the box art, there's like an orc facing off with a human and they're looking like really angrily at each other. And my mom was like, "What'd you guys get at the store?" And he shows her this box and she's like, "This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen." I remember just like my soul was crushed, but then I got angry. It's like, I'm playing this. No, I'm playing this. And there was an online mode, and that was also another like transition, playing online and seeing like custom maps and stuff. I'm like, wow, so you can they're just altering the numbers and like the gameplay itself. And it was like a totally once again, like another mind-blowing experience as far as gaming went. And I was like, this is totally cool.
I love that. Yeah, my mom had words to say when she saw the Diablo box art. It was just like Satan, and she was like, "What are you giving our son to play? This is the devil."
It's so good.
And I'm
Mhm.
like killing Diablo in hell, and it was awesome.
It's like, do you like the devil, mom? I'm killing the devil. Why are you speaking in his defense? I don't understand.
Yeah, I'm not on his side or anything. It's just, I'm against this guy. So basically console into StarCraft, shout out to the Korean foreign exchange students, and then you sort
Mhm.
of made this transition into online gaming. Were there any other games that really stood out to you during your childhood, teenage years, like some of these games that really like sort of shaped you as a gamer?
Ah, man, that would take I feel like I could take a big portion of this podcast answering that. But the one that comes to mind, honestly, and this is probably no surprise, I don't know if you've played this, but World of Warcraft took up a massive portion of my life. And it was interesting seeing the progression because that game is the one where I kind of became like more of a sweat. Like back in the day, I played vanilla, so the very first version of it. And I just wanted to PvP. I just wanted to fight other players. I love the idea of just like fighting out in the open world while you're trying to level and stuff like that. I just thought that was so fun that at any moment some player could just be like, "Hey man, are you questing? I'm killing you." That was so funny to me. So I really liked it, and I leveled up, got a warrior. Big surprise. We'll talk about that later. A warrior to level 60, the max level, and I found that to get the best items in the game, it was a huge time sink at that point. And I didn't have like the time, or I had time, but I couldn't stick to like a raid schedule, which is how you got the best gear in the game. So, long story short, in order for me to enjoy PvP, I didn't have the gear, so I really had to step up like my game. I had to get really good if I wanted to compete with these people who would just gear diff me. They would have really good gear. So I got really good, but I would still get owned by these people who had like crazy good gear. So it was fun for a time, but then the expansion came out, which was called the Burning Crusade, and that had a whole system called the Arena system, and that's where I started shining as a sweat because that was less of a time sink and more of a skill based thing, and you would get gear based on like your number of wins, your win loss ratio, etc. So that is when I started getting really good. I started getting like the best gear in the game, and I was I'll never forget this. I played with a druid. There was like 2v2s. That was like a competitive mode. Me and this druid. His name was Kimmy. Everybody thought he was a girl, but it was a guy. It was just a dude who lived in New Jersey. His character name was Kimmy. He was a female night elf. But yeah, we just played arena, man. Just grinded arena, and we got into like the top 0.5% of like a few 100,000 players, and we just kept going and going. It was like really fun. We hit like yeah, the rank is called Gladiator in that game. We got Gladiator a bunch of times in those days, and we were just a menace. I lived. This is last thing I'll say. I lived my dream out in an MMO because we had the best gear and we were essentially unstoppable. I would go to the other faction's capital cities where they felt safest, and I just start slaughtering everybody. Me and my little posse would just take over the city essentially, and nobody could do anything about it. It was like it was like pretty disruptive to like their economy. Actually, would kill like all the auctioneers and all the bankers, like all the NPCs, and like what's going on? Why can't I trade? I can't go. I can't access the auction house. So those are fun times.
That's amazing, dude. Yeah, I lost a
Yeah.
lot of my life to World of Warcraft as well. And I
Oh,
loved
well,
every
you know
minute
what?
of it. Yeah, I got in and I hit level 60. I, I I believe the day that Burning Crusade came out. So I never got to actually play through the end game
Ah,
of vanilla,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
Burning Crusade was so damn good. And I remember basically experiencing all the same things you just mentioned, doing arenas. I actually got into a guild and was able to do raiding. I when I selected the server that I basically selected, I didn't realize what time zone it was in. So it was like 3 hours ahead of me. So I would be up till like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning raiding with these guys because I was on
Yep.
the raid roster and I chose the wrong server time. But it was a blast, man. I loved World of Warcraft back in the day. I actually
Mhm,
recently got back into it for hardcore when it came out. And I played
mhm.
quite a bit of that as sort of like a lead up into Path of Exile too. So I definitely got my fix. It was actually super fun re-experiencing like classic vanilla WoW, but from the context of hardcore. Did you end up trying it as well, or?
No, I didn't. I was following it though. I know there was like a lot of drama, plenty of content out there of like all the, oh my God, so many of the creators joined that one, was it OnlyFans? I think it was called, that one guild, and that was hilarious to watch. But I wasn't gonna touch it. I was busy playing other things.
Yeah, I ended up joining their like sister guild basically, where like you couldn't join OnlyFans, but you could join like their guild that was like basically like part of it. So it was funny just to be like in the vicinity of all this like crazy stuff happening. Basically, one of my
Right.
favorite Twitch arcs by far is the hardcore World of
Yeah.
Warcraft arc for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so
Agreed.
now that you're not a child and now that you're not playing World of Warcraft all the time, how do you find balancing the responsibilities of life with gaming these days? What's your strategy there?
Well, I'm not totally convinced that I'm not a child, but I will say I do have a daughter, so that does take up a lot of my time during the day. And really, the first thing that comes to mind, as you mentioned, and I think I even saw one of your other podcast guests say this, is that I love playing games still. I love creating content. So I will simply sacrifice some of my sleep for that. That's just what it boils down to. You get, it's just that's the time when she's asleep, and me and my wife, we have like, we want to do our little bit of alone time. We usually watch something together, but then we do like a little bit of alone time. And during that alone time is when I will, play some games, record, do some video editing, etc. Catch up on work, maybe. That's all sorts of stuff. So it's essentially the nighttime is when I try to do all my stuff.
That's amazing. I love hearing sort of the different responses I've gotten to that question because as we get older, I'm no youngin anymore either. So we all get these responsibilities in life, but at the core of it all, we still are able to sort of balance out gaming and have that time to ourselves, which is super important. And I think that it's great that you found like a way to sort of balance that out and be quite busy with the amount of content and the amount of stuff you've been doing. Like it seems like you're really on top of it. So that's great, man.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, it also helps that I focus. Like, again, I'm sure we'll talk more about this later, but I recognize that I don't have a ton of time anymore, and I've always been this way regardless. But I was like, okay, I love playing warriors in any game, so I'm just going to tunnel vision this one class and spend my time knowing the ins and outs of this one class. I don't need to. That's it. That's it. I just want to get really good at this one class. I'll just tunnel vision them, and that's how I kind of make my content, because that's like, I like to experiment with the one class. I like to go do deep dives on the different mechanics, and things like that. So yeah, that's just that's where I do it. I just specialize in that thing. I'm like, when I know this thing well, I want to be good at this one thing. So I haven't played like another class at all. I just like tunnel vision this one thing, right?
That's amazing. I mean, I feel like at that point it becomes like part of your brand. So like any game that you're playing, like your audience, your community can expect to see like, oh, like Lex is probably going to be going warrior. Let's like check his stuff out and see like what he's got cooking. You know what I mean? So no, that's
Hmm.
awesome, man. So with ARPGs in mind, I know we're sort of transitioning here into Path of Exile. We're talking about warriors and stuff like that. What was the first ARPG that you ever sunk your teeth into?
Oh, that's a good question. I think this might be a popular answer. I think it was Diablo 2. I didn't play Diablo 2 when it came out actually. I remember it was kind of like in my like on my radar. I was like, yeah, this is a Blizzard game from like the golden days. I should probably play it at some point. I just never got around to it. And then just one summer when I was staying at my parents from college, I forget. I just had it. I bought it or something. I can't remember exactly. There might have been a deal, but I got it, and I was like, all right, let's just try it out. I haven't played like an action RPG. Let's just try this out. And I threw it on, and strangely enough, I was listening to a lot of the Hives at the time, which is really random. But I was listening to the band of the Hives, so I put the Hives on, and I played through Diablo 2 for like hours on the first session. It was just for some reason the music and playing the game just it just went so well together, just coasting through and just the rhythm and just blasting through the screens, just wiping out mobs. I was just going and going and going. I was like, hey, I get it. So I didn't even hear like Diablo 2's original soundtrack the first playthrough. I was just listening to the Hives the whole time. It has a good soundtrack, by the way, but yeah, I was just listening to the Hives, blasting through, and I really enjoyed it. It was sick. So Diablo 2 was my first experience. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said. I think a lot of people, especially from like our generation, I got to play it essentially like not when it came out because it came out. I believe Diablo 2 came out in like, ooh, I want to say like 2001 or something like that, but shortly after. And yeah, it was essentially like a transformative game for me. It was and is my favorite game, like to date, like top favorite game of all time. Soundtrack, as
Nice.
you
Yeah.
mentioned, incredible.
Yep.
Just everything about it is just very special to me. And I think that that's why for me, I've been so attached to Path of Exile 2 is because for a lot of the things that they've done in Path of Exile 2 are in reference to Diablo 2 as well.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, even I didn't play a ton of Path of Exile 1, but what I did play Path of Exile 1 like for the first time, I think almost 10 years ago or something, like way, way, way in the past on a computer that could barely run it. So like my most distant memory of Path of Exile 1 was like me reaching to I think it was the boss, like the end boss at the time. I don't remember. It was like a stormy tower, and you fought a boss on this tower, and it was really dark, but my computer would just tank on frames, and I'd have to like I don't remember if you could like go back down the stairs or you could town portal or something, but I just had to keep leaving the fight because my computer would just be like sparks and smoke was just flying out of it. So that yeah, that was like one of the earlier other action RPG experiences that I've had. Yeah, wait, hold on. You were talking about something though. I lost my train of thought. There was another point I wanted to make. What was it that you were just talking about? Diablo 2. You said like the music was really good. What else did you say?
Yeah, it's just my favorite game. But
Oh,
a part of that point was my favorite game is now translating into basically being tied with Path of Exile 2 because
oh,
there's so much artistry that I can see taking inspiration from in Path of Exile 2 from Diablo 2. I could list about I should make a video on like all the similarities because there's honestly so
oh
many
yeah.
of them and I love that. One thing I wanted to ask you though is so you said you didn't play Path of Exile 1 much. Was there any reason why you weren't able to necessarily sink your teeth into that game as much as you have in Path of Exile 2?
Well, real quick, I remember the point I was trying to make. Path of Exile 1 reminded me of Diablo 2 as well. There are definitely clear influences from that, and I was just like, oh, this is what this is like what the natural progression of what Diablo 2 should have come next, right? But yeah, so you're asking me if why I didn't stick with it. Well, the first time was because my computer was just crap and just couldn't run it, so I just couldn't do it, and I was like, ugh. I want to play it, but I just don't want to play it like 15 FPS or something. So that's why I stopped then. And then I actually picked it back up like maybe a month or two before Path of Exile 2 because Path of Exile 2 was just getting so hyped up. I'm like, oh, I remember this game. So I started jumping into Path of Exile 1. I didn't make it very far, but I was just playing the beginning. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this. I'm actually really enjoying this again. So Path of Exile 1, I'm not playing regularly, but I was enjoying it again, and my computer can now run it. So that's like a game that is like now on the table for me. Right now I'm still fully addicted and loving Path of Exile 2, but Path of Exile 1, it's there. I'll play it sometime probably, but yeah, that's pretty much the reason I didn't ever stick with it because first time hardware was crap and second time Path of Exile 2, I'm just playing this now.
Absolutely. Yeah, to sort of follow up with what you mentioned about how Path of Exile 1 reminded you of Diablo 2. I think that was like their intention obviously was, you hear them talk about Path of Exile 1, and they essentially wanted to make the true successor to Diablo 2 because they believed that like Diablo 3 wasn't really hitting the mark. And like, we don't even need to talk about Diablo 4 unless you want to. But I think that it definitely veered away from, and there's a lot of reasons why. Blizzard North was essentially like absorbed by like Blizzard, and the team that created this amazing game was like no longer there. And so it naturally just progressed into like a game losing its sort of vision. But
Yeah.
yeah, so with Path of Exile 1 for me, it was like just a little bit too I don't know, a little bit too much going on all the time. Like it was just like there's just like you were just like bombarded with stuff constantly, and I found it really hard to get like into the game because I was constantly leaving it to look something up or watch a video on this,
Mhm.
or
Right.
it wasn't keeping me engaged in the actual game, learning the game, which is something that I think that like Path of Exile 2 does so well. It's just way better at like teaching new players. And so I feel like I was targeted by them by to get in the game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I want to talk to you about with Path of Exile 2 so far is just like what about the game for you is really just making it like one of the most fun games to play for you right now?
Oh, I mean, I think the way I'd answer that, well, there are a bunch of answers to that, honestly. So, from like a polish standpoint, I really love like just how it looks. The animations are awesome. The sound design's awesome. Like this, I'm still getting so much satisfaction out of every successful bone shatter I throw out there. Like that sound, that crunch is like so satisfying. I love like all the little sound design details like that. So well done. But for me personally, and I don't know if it's this way in Path of Exile 1. I know that the passive skill tree is probably pretty damn complex in Path of Exile 1, if not more so. But Path of Exile 2, I just love being able to like customize my character, and like with such a complex like skill tree like that. I think it's so fun that I can like kind of dabble in all these different ways to play, and like a lot of them are legitimate. You can make a character like from the get go. I was like, oh, look at these cool fire nodes. I want to play like a fire themed warrior. So I just kind of slapped one together, and it worked really well. And I was like, oh man, this is so sick. I was intimidated at first, but then I was like, well, you start here and you just kind of make a path that makes sense as you're progressing. So I think that's the part that I really like the most, is just like coming up with a build that feels really good, coming up with like a strong build just without following guides or anything, just improvising it and it working. I feel like in Path of Exile 1, you could correct me, a lot of people have to look stuff up and perhaps follow another build if they're going to be like successful.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you, man. Like in my very short sort of experience in Path of Exile 1, it definitely felt like everything I was doing was an absolute mistake and that I would have to basically undo everything. And with Path of Exile 2, I did a complete blind like playthrough on my first
Yep.
playthrough as well as my second, and it was just like exactly what you said. Make a build based on like what you want, and then kind of just formulating that to make it work. And it just felt really nice. Like it was just like I don't know. It's weird because people talk about build flexibility in Path of Exile 2 and how it's hard to experiment for various reasons, and I understand those points. But if you like commit to something that you're actually like trying to do, I don't know if it's working that well in this new patch, but previously it was like you could pretty much figure it out and make it work, you know what I mean? So, yeah, it's a very nice point about it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we got build flexibility in there. As you mentioned, the visuals, the music, the immersion, the sound effects. We have like all of this stuff coming together to make a really, really nice game. Um, you got to like end game. Did you end up beating Arbiter? Did you end up like maxing out the Atlas points? How far did you get?
So I got fairly far. I didn't push to like tier 4 versions of the bosses or anything. I just kind of did each pinnacle boss and was like, hey, I got that experience. That feels pretty good. I also, at the time, was running a very, very broken build. So I was skipping a lot of those fights. I don't know if you saw the Magma Barrier Trample Toes video. That's like, oh my God, it's so ridiculous. You just put shield walls down, you time a Magma Barrier, fight's over. That's it. That's all you need to do. It's just one blockable attack. That's all you need. So I was kind of doing that, and that was fun. But then I think I just wanted to try what was it, hardcore solo self found, just kind of on a whim, because I felt like I was reaching a point where I'm just like, all right, I'm just kind of like looking at trade, trying to optimize items and things like that, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time doing that. I was like, I just want to try a different league, so I tried hardcore solo self found, and I really liked it. I don't have to worry about trade at all. I'm like, you just gotta roll with what you get, man. You just go, you just gotta go and improvise, and I really like that. I mean, you're playing right now through that league, and it's just I think if anybody who's watching this has not tried it, I recommend it. It's a really like it feels like a really freeing way to play somehow. You don't have to worry about trade at all. You see what you get. What you get is what you get. You can craft obviously, and I think they made that better because before, man, it's so much RNG involved. But yeah, I mean that's just like I got experience like dabbled into the end game, but I didn't like push all the way. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think that like the more you push through at the end game in softcore trade, the more you realize how like flawed and like almost rudimentary the like trading system is. And I think that that is essentially my experience as well, where like I played for probably like I don't know 250 hours or something like that on softcore trade when I first started, and I
Mhm.
honestly just got fed up with like people not answering my messages, people like joining your party and not going into your hideout, and then you go to their hideout, and it's just like there was a website from back in the day for Diablo 2 trading called D2JSP, and it was the exact same
Mhm.
formula, but it was a forum. And yeah, it just feels so like akin to that. Do you think that like the game, like Path of Exile 2, will ever like uh change their trading system and maybe incorporate something like an auction house or some sort of stash tab thing? What do you think what do you think they would do?
That's so this reminds me of a game I used to play called Dark and Darker, and they had different trade channels in that game where you'd have to go in there, link your items, and message people, do that sort of thing. You didn't have to join a hideout or anything, but you did have to do that. And there was a time where people were like, just add an auction house, just add the auction house, just add it. So like, okay, fine, fine, fine. We wanted to try and make this work, but let's try the auction house alongside the chats, the trade chats. So they add the auction house. Immediately, the trade chats were dead, and everybody's using the auction house. It just saves so much time. You put a thing up for a price, you buy it, you're done. So much easier. I do think it would be better. Like I think one of the devs said that they want to like kind of encourage that old school thing you're talking about, like hey, messaging somebody and hey, let's meet up in person, in quotes in person, and trade these items, give me the currency, etc. But I'd rather just use the auction house, man. I don't like browsing trade. I just want to see a thing, and like you said, I message people and they just don't message. I message them again later, message them again later, and I'm just like, I don't have the time for this. I just want the just give me the auction house.
Hell yeah. I've been playing Dark and Darker since like the early beta days. I love Iron Mace. I love the
Yeah.
game so much, and I remember like going into those chat rooms and like spamming and watching the wall of text just like go down in front of me to find something. And it's like a relying on like mail, like in-person post when you know that email exists. It's like, why are we
Yeah.
like, I get it. There's like a certain charm to like writing a letter and like receiving like a handwritten letter and stuff like that. But like in the grand scheme of things, it's just like super inefficient and like not the greatest. And there's a reason why we've developed in terms of like, modern games have developed now, this, better system for trading. Absolutely.
Right. Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really do hope that like in the future, once like they've released, the various content of the game, that, grinding your games can finally address this, because I would consider playing like Trade League again if you could just like have your items listed on your stash, have someone buy it, currency just gets deposited, easy peasy. You don't ever have to like leave and, you know, it would be great.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's again, especially since we just talked about earlier, like how I'm a dad. I don't have that much time. I don't got that much time. I don't got that much time just to scroll through trade, or whatever. So like, it's kind of funny, but like my hours are skewed because I'm not playing the game, but I'll just leave Path of Exile up for somebody to message me. I'll just leave it up for somebody to message me, and then I'll just like give them an item they've had on trade. I don't like that. I'd rather again. I think auction house would be fine.
Absolutely. It's very like disruptive to like the gameplay like cycle as well. Like, you're in a map, you're blasting, you're like fighting a boss or something like that, and then you have this guy like spamming you to buy like an item for like one exalt, and you're just like,
Right.
okay, now I have to like leave my, my time of actually playing the game in order to like, and then as you mentioned, you kind of end up like filling this like merchant role where you're just like you're not actually playing the game, you're just in your hideout and you're just like waiting for people to like potentially message you for like a really expensive item. So yeah, there's definitely work to be done there though, and I hope that they
Yeah.
do and inevitably work on that in the future, because I don't know, I hope they don't die on that hill, man, with trade. It just feels very rudimentary.
Yeah, agreed. And even thankfully they changed this. I think I don't know if it's in the game yet, but before when somebody would message you about buying an item, you'd have to waste one of your portals, to go do it. So now you have one less portal to go back into the map just to like give this dude an item. So, not great.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, so Dawn of the Hunt just came out, big patch, big content update. What were your thoughts about the patch prior to actually getting your hands on it? Was it, were you excited to see all of these nerfs, all of these changes, or were you sort of like a little bit skeptical? Were you like, how are you feeling about all that?
I think, I mean, I'm overall like I love the game, so I was excited for any like big change, and I saw a lot of nerfs across the board, and I've seen that before in other games. So I was like a little skeptical, but I was like, you know what, I only play warrior, so I don't know if like these other classes were that overtuned and needed the nerfs. Maybe I didn't know, but I saw some of the changes to warrior, and I thought they were pretty reasonable. I mean, they changed perfect strike a bunch because I mean they saw this during the first race events that they held. Warriors were like always winning because perfect strike just early on the scaling is ridiculous. You melt bosses so quickly with perfect strike. It's just so funny. So they nerfed it, but again, I don't think I agree with like the shotgun approach that they took. Because it's still a good ability. It's still like a boss killer ability. Don't get me wrong. It's still totally usable. But I remember seeing like, hey, we reduced the damage of perfect strike. I'm like, okay, cool. Hey, we changed the timing of the support gem, like the perfect timing support gem. They're like, hey, we reduced the timing window and the damage bonus. I'm like, okay. And they're like, hey, we also perfect strike no longer has 100% chance to ignite. I'm like, oh, whoa, hold on, guys. Maybe incrementally try some of this stuff. They're just like throwing a bunch of nerfs on one ability at once, and I've seen this before. Again, thinking about Dark and Darker Days, where they with some of the patches, they would just nerf so much. I'm like, guys, slow down, just slow down.
Yeah, it almost seems like their like methodology for like nerfing and balance is like crank the dial really far to one side, and then when people get really upset, they like slowly turn the dial back until like it reaches a happy medium, instead of like how you
Mhm.
mentioned, maybe turn the dial a little slower every like patch or so until it like reaches that equilibrium naturally. And so I think that them overtuning dials really upset the player base a lot with this new patch. I know that you
Yeah.
said that you haven't like got your hands on a lot of different classes. One side question: if you were to play any other class and break the Lexd like sort of like style, what would it be?
Um, well, here's it would be Marauder. Is that cheating? Marauder. I'm kidding. So Marauder, I would definitely play, but also I think Templar. Templar seems like a really cool class. It's warrior esque enough for me. It's like a melee using some light to like kind of boost yourself up some more. So I'd probably play Templar whenever that comes out. So that would be the thing that breaks the warrior streak. And Marauder, I mean, I don't know how different that is to you, but I'm going to play that also.
I'm a complete like Path of Exile 2 Andy. I don't know anything about Path of Exile 1. I know that these classes exist, but I have no idea like what kind of archetype they are. So, but we would never see like Lext on like a witch or a monk or something like that. Like there's just no interest in that at all.
Probably not, because this is the thing. This is like how it's always been for me. It's just extra funny to me to have this world presented in front of me where there's all this magic and all sorts of fantastical creatures, and then I just choose to hop in as like a guy with a stick. I'm just I'm just using the hammer. I'm using the club, and it's funny to me just because there's all these options. But I'm like, no. Just give me a hammer. I'm good.
I love that. And to be fair with you, like I've tried a lot of the different classes. I mained Gemling last patch, very very strong, doing attribute stacking. But I played the Ranger. I played a little bit of Witch, and I gotta say, out of all the playthroughs I've done with all the different characters, I actually enjoyed the Warrior the most. It just had the most like oomph. It had the most like
Hmm.
chunkiness. Like you know what I mean? Like it
Yep.
just felt really good to play. It didn't feel great to play on launch because I feel like it was hard, like it was very challenging as a warrior. Like I just got absolutely dumpstered on half the time, but I'm a man of who enjoys a challenge, and so I kind of took that on the chin and tried my best to just move forward with that. But out of all the different classes, I feel like I just have enjoyed the warrior playthrough the most. I don't know why it is. It's just a combination of a bunch of different good things.
Yeah, I mean, you have the right attitude right there, saying like you're kind of rising to the challenge, right? I feel like so before I even got into like this deep into action RPGs, I'm like a huge Souls-like fan. I mean, this is another transformative time in my life when I played the first Dark Souls. I'd never played a game like that. I like challenges, and that game was crazy hard when it came out, and I that just like it brainwashed me, man. I just played every FromSoft game for the most part since then, and I'm just like a masochist now. I'm just like, oh yeah, this is like this is impossible, but I want to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm just gonna like keep bashing my head against it until it works, you know. So yeah, I'm up for the challenge. I played Warrior also, you know, obviously for my first playthrough ever, and I really enjoyed it. You know, it was pretty dang challenging, especially some of those boss fights for the first time. And it is probably the most Souls-like experience playing as a warrior, since you literally have to dodge roll some of that stuff. You're not really quick compared to the other classes, so you know, just it felt right to me. It was really hard, but it still felt like really good to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say it feels like a natural progression to move from sort of the Souls like or the Dark Souls genre into Path of Exile 2, and especially as playing the Warrior as well. It literally feels like it's just like an isometric like Dark Souls, especially if you're playing on like hardcore or like SSF as well. So I can
Yep.
definitely see like why you enjoy this game, and no, I think that's rad. Me personally, I've played Dark Souls. I really love it. I loved Elden Ring. I never beat any of
Oh
them
yeah.
though. I always
Mhm.
got into these games, really enjoyed my time, and then I always say to my friends, I'm really shitty at playing single player games. I just love multiplayer games so much. I don't know
Yeah.
why. So I
Yeah.
got to go back and retry those games out. I feel like they're just goated, man. So good.
I mean, yeah, I gotta tell you, I think Elden Ring to this day. I mean, I'm loving Path of Exile too, but I think Elden Ring's still like the best game I played in the last 20 years. It's so good. I spent a ton of time in that game. It just made again, there's something fun about building different characters in that game. That's another game where like you can build characters in all these different ways, and it all like works to some extent. It's like really fun, and again, it is really challenging. I love the challenge of it. Super difficult, but such a cool game. Definitely recommend it.
Yeah, man. I feel like if my internet just like gets cut and I can just like play a game like without having to like worry about anything else and just get into it, I feel like that for me is the time where I'll like pick up like a nice single player game, run through that, and you know, you don't share or you're not alone in that sentiment. Like a lot of people view Elden Ring as like one of the best games ever made, and I have to agree.
So
It's
good.
incredible. It's incredible.
Mhm.
So back to Path of Exile 2. You got your hands on Dawn of the Hunt. You're playing through the Warrior. You're in Cruel right now. What are what are your thoughts on sort of the vibe of Warrior? Has it changed a lot from point one, or is it still feeling good? Where do you sit on that sort of line?
Yeah, I think Warrior, like I mentioned the perfect strike nerf, and again, it's still good. It just feels a little clunkier to me because I was spamming it before, so it's fine. It needed a nerf, but that does stand out to me as being a little bit weaker because of all the different things they changed about it. But still like the ability. But overall, I think the way Warrior plays, like generally now, I mean, I always play like tanky boys. I always like getting the shield and using a one hander for most of the playthrough, and sometimes I'll switch to Giant's Blood when it makes sense to. If I find like a two handed that's too good to pass up, I'm like, all right. Let me respect for this. But Shield Warriors actually just released a video about this. A lot of the shield skills were buffed, which is super cool. Like Shield Charge is like a legit nuke now. Actually, I spec my warrior into Avatar Fire, and Shield Charge now ignites, and it's stronger than Perfect Strike now. I'm not even kidding. Like Shield Charge hits for harder than Perfect Strike, and then ignites for longer. Like the ignite is like the magnitude is way higher. So that is like a really cool way to play, because I love playing like with a shield using magma barrier and all this stuff. So just being able to play like this flame tank, and now being able to rely more on the shield rather than the weapon is really cool to me.
That's dope, man. Yeah, I watched that video last night while I was in bed, and I was just like, I never would have thought to even try any of this stuff out, but it was like doing crazy damage. Like I was watching you like
Yeah.
hit King of the Mist like with a shield charge. It was just like
Hmm.
it was impressive. Yeah. Very, very
Uh-huh.
cool.
What's nice too, real quick, just to interrupt, is what's nice about Shield Charge too, compared to some of the other shield abilities, is that you can empower it. So you can use Infernal Cry, and then it just does all that extra damage. It's so wild.
That's excellent. And did you say you went Smith of Katava as well, or which ascendancy did you choose?
Oh yeah, Smith of Katava. It's too good, man. It's too good to pass up. Like the defensives are great. I know you're playing hardcore solo self-found, and when I eventually make my character in that league, that's like the obvious choice. Just super tanky. You don't have to worry about elemental damage. Like very easily to just get 90 in all with that ascendancy. So that's up there. Yeah, I've been really enjoying Smith of Katava, though. I think I want to play around with Fire Spell on hit. I can't remember the name of the ascendancy node, but there is that, you can get gather energy and cast a random fire spell. It's tough because I don't want to invest a lot of intelligence in my current build, and for a lot of fire spells, you need a lot of intelligence for it to do damage. So probably just socket like detonate dead or something in there, which is based off of I think the mob's percentage of life, like the corpse will explode based on and deal damage based on their like health percentage. So it scales a little better. So I don't know yet though. It seems like I just wish I could socket any fire spell in there. I know that'd probably be too overpowered, but that's like off the cuff what I wanted.
Yeah, I feel like, that particular node on the Smith of Katava tree just feels very niche, like super, super niche to the point where like some big brain person out there is going to discover an incredible build with that particular thing in mind. But I think a way to solve that would be through items. I don't know if they have an item that allows you to fulfill the requirements of any skill gem with strength instead of intelligence or
Hmm, hmm.
dexterity. I know that there are items to do that for other stats, but if that item is available in the game, maybe they added it within the 100 unique items. I think that that will actually allow the Smith of Katava to do some crazy stuff with different fire spells cast from that.
Yep.
Have you tried like temper weapon or like the manifest weapon or the other two ones? Have you experimented with those at all?
So that's a good question. I think well, it's funny because temper weapon was bugged. I think for a little while, like it wasn't actually doing anything, or it only did something for the first hit, and the other empowered attacks weren't actually adding damage. I think they fixed it. They might have hot fixed it now, but I think temper weapon is something I want to play around with because people kind of meme on the anvil animation having to sit there and hammer your weapon, but I still think it could be legit in some scenarios against like a boss, especially if they're doing their like intro animation. What else are you gonna do? That's the perfect time to like hammer the weapon and hopefully get some extra damage. So why not? Um, and the animate weapon, I'm not really sure how strong it is. I don't generally play like minion builds, and that feels like kind of a minion-y build to me. So I don't really have an opinion on it. I don't think I'm going to pursue it, but I definitely want to try temper weapon out and see how that feels.
Totally. Yeah. I really like the Smith of Kataba for a lot of reasons. One of the big reasons I like it is because it is pretty flexible in terms of how you can sort of progress your character depending on how many ascendancy points you have. And when you're playing hardcore, you don't really want to take too many risks, but it is important to see like what the most optimal way is for where you're at in the game. And so when I got my like fifth and sixth ascendancy points, I just fired a couple into tempered weapon to see how it felt. And let me tell you right now, I know they're fixing it and they're making it so that you get three empowered hits instead of empowered hits off of one strike. And the time is reduced, but at its current state, it's very, very like, there are opportunities where you can use it, like as you mentioned, when a boss is spawning or something like that. But like, you're not really using that in maps to do anything. And the trade-off for the time investment that you're getting is like only 400% extra damage. So it just doesn't feel like it's enough to commit to. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, I'm interested to
Maybe
see
it'd
how
be,
you
be
say.
more
Oh,
worth
sorry.
it. No, no, yeah, yeah. I think maybe it'd be more worth it if like you did some like AoE damage or something each time you hammered the weapon or something, so you could just like do it in the middle of a pack. That'd be kind of cool in my opinion. But yeah, I don't know.
That's actually a really good suggestion because yeah, like, you know, when you're in maps, you never played Monk, but there's an ability called Meditate where you can like double your energy shield essentially, but you have to cast it intermittently between doing packs basically, and it adds this extra layer of like downtime between like you actually just like blasting. So I think anything that like sort of takes you out of that experience just feels not the greatest. And so I hope that like, because the idea of temper weapon and the like, the actual thing is kind of cool. Like it is cool, it fits within the lore of the ascendancy as well, but just from a like technical standpoint, it just feels a bit weird right now. So I hope that they make it a little bit
Yeah,
better. I don't know, maybe buff the damage. AoE on up on hit could be crazy too.
that'd be so cool.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. So with the dawn of the hunt out now for at least like a couple, it's got to be like a week now. What are your
Mhm.
plans? Are you planning on going tier 4 end game bosses at this point? Are you planning on doing your stint on Trade League and then moving to HCSSF sooner rather than later? Where do you see yourself going with this patch?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I want to get to endgame, and for me, I want to like yeah, I wanna explore Endgame and kinda push it a little bit because there's a lot of new stuff added to the Endgame, and I keep hearing from different, like, content creators that, the Endgame is, like, much improved overall, so I wanna, like, check it out, spend a good bit of time in there, and, there's some items I got my eye on that I wanna try some builds with, one of them being that chess piece that It gives you all 3 heralds, which is cool, but it reduces elemental. It makes elemental resist of all enemies 0, right? If I'm remembering correctly, and I'm like, I want to try something with that because I like playing a fire warrior, so I want that. So that, there's definitely a bit of dabbling I want to do, and then we'll see how push. I can't like really quantify it because I feel like I'm just going to go into the end game, and then when I get bored, then I'll switch over to like hardcore solo self found, and that mode was so fun to me. I'd probably just stick with that for a while. I really enjoyed that mode. I only played one character in it, and it was a really good run. My first character ever, I got up to level 79. I was really happy about that. But then I don't know if you saw this post, but I posted the death picture of my character, and I basically was in a map. I think it was Hidden Grotto, and there was a bunch of rituals obviously around. And there was one ritual that was positioned so terribly. It was like on a ledge. There wasn't much room to go anywhere. It's just a massive wall and a big pit. And I was like, that looks terrible. I think I could do it. And I went in and I got quartered and obliterated. I was like, no, that was so dumb. I was like, I should have just trusted my gut. I should have skipped it. But yeah, I mean that was still so fun. I didn't even feel salty at all. It's just like that was really fun. I enjoyed that run, and I would totally do it again. So I'm gonna mess around the end game for a bit in softcore trade, but then I'm gonna switch over to hardcore solo self found and just see how far I can get.
That's excellent. Yeah, it almost feels like you're playing two different games between the game modes. It really does. There's so
Yeah.
much of a different play style that you have to adapt to in hardcore solo self-found. And it's like what you said, you kind of just roll with the punches. And I feel like that adds so much magic to the game instead of like dropping currency and being like, oh, I can buy an upgrade with that on the trade site. It's like, oh, I have to make these interesting decisions with where I'm going to invest that currency into. And like, do I swap this item into a new one at the expense of certain modifiers for other modifiers? And
Hmm.
all of these things, I think, have made it so that for me, it feels like the best way to play. But I don't discredit the fact that like, the the more relaxing play style of like the softcore trade league is nice sometimes. Like I feel like when I'm playing hardcore solo self found, I'm like on edge like constantly. Like it just feels
Oh
so
yeah.
like intense. So I do want to eventually go on to softcore trade league and just like vibe out. You know what I mean? Like relax a bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally get it. I mean, yeah, I mean, for me, this like I've used Softcore Trade League since you can, browse the trading site and find like the best items and find whatever uniques as long as you have the currency for it and kind of piece together these like ridiculous, super like meme-worthy builds at some point. It's just funny. It's just like a funny league to me just to come up with these meme builds that just wipe the screen. That's like really funny. Hardcore solo self-found it's like way more methodical and strategic, and you just again like the loot drops mean so much more since you can't trade for them, and your crafting is so much more important since you can't trade. And that I do like that feeling a little more. I think I was just like, oh man, the drop means so much more instead of having something amazing drop in the softcore. And you're like, oh cool, maybe I can sell this for like a few divines or something. You don't even care that much, and you can just it's like okay, this will help me get some other item that's a bigger upgrade for me or something. It's like not as big a deal.
Yeah, it almost feels like the way that you sort of look at items and look at drops is like more akin to the vision of like what GGG has for the game than like Trade League, where like you're looking at drops on Trade League in terms of like how much currency or like value can I get out of this versus like how good this is for my like character basically.
Right.
For the
Right.
majority of the time that you ever get a drop. So yeah, it's just a special time, and it's like what you said. Anybody who's out there like who hasn't tried it yet, like I really recommend giving it a go. It's just a really, really exciting way to play the game. It's not for everybody. You do have some really painful moments. It sounds like you took your death pretty well, but anytime I die, it really hurts. I get like so attached to these
Yeah.
characters, man.
Oh man, yeah. It's funny because there's so many close calls. Like I went like when I approached that league for the first time, I was like, I'm just gonna go like super super tanky. I went for like all the most defensive nodes. I kind of went like a more southern route on the warrior tree and grabbed like armor nodes, strength nodes, armor, more strength, beef, etc. Just kind of went that route, just to boost up my life. And it was like so smooth. I was like, this is pretty chill. And then I reached oh, what the hell's that boss's name? It's the ape. It's the ape. You know what I'm talking about? The, the ape.
Oh, I know about the monkey. I'll tell you about all about that
Yeah,
monkey.
that's right. So I remember I reached him for the first time, and he hit me. I think I actually have a clips of this on one of my videos, but he hit me, and I was like, like I actually audibly gasped because I saw my life disappear. I was like, whoa, 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 and I was just running around. I played it so terribly. It's not even that hard, but it's just if you get hit, if you make one mistake, he just ruins you. And he hit me multiple times, but because of my build and just investing so much into life, I was actually okay. I made it through, taking a few of them on the chin. I was like, whew, we made it, and that I was like, okay, so he's the guy to keep an eye out for, like later on during cruel, during maps, etc. I'm a little scared.
Dude, that zone, Jungle Ruins, gives me so much anxiety every time I play through the game.
Hmm.
And there are certain events that happen in this game that give me sort of like PTSD. And it's funny that you mentioned Hidden Grotto. So I lost my first ever like maps character. It was a warrior last patch in Hidden Grotto as well. And so every time I enter this zone, I just get all this. I feel like icky almost. I just get scared. You know what I mean? I'm like
Yeah.
in like a level 1 map, and I'm like, why am I scared of this area? And it's you have these things, and so the monkey, anybody who plays through the game in hardcore solo self-found, just skip them for a while. It's like what you said. If you're not like specced into life and like armor and like all that stuff like heavily, you're just gonna get one tapped. You can cheese him around like trees and like the ruins and stuff like that, but all it takes is one mistake, and then all of that time that you just spent getting to that point is just gone. So that's been my strategy with the monkey. Is just like, for normal, I usually go back to him when I'm about level 50, and then for cruel, I waited until like I was like level 70 to fight him, like just so that it's like mechanically he's so easy. Just roll when he does the very telegraphed giant slam, but if the giant slam hits you, you're
Yeah.
just dead, and it's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I remember, I think what's ironic, but this is like again something from the me playing all those like from soft games, but he's an example of a boss where it's actually safer to be closer to him as much as you don't want to be. It's like if you just keep circling around him and trying to get to like his butt, essentially most of the attacks will miss. And the only thing you have to watch out for at that point is the roll attack, which still does a lot of damage. So it's really quick. Yeah, watch the roll, block it, or try to dodge it best you can. But I found that was like a little easier, like on the when I went through and fought him again on Cruel. I was like, oh, if I just stay close to him and I just like keep circling, it's not so bad. So if you're gonna try it as a melee character, what I'd recommend. But if you want to be extra safe and you don't want to lose your character, do what Blaze said. Just come back at a way later level. It's probably smarter.
Yeah, I lost my level 92 gemling last season to him in maps.
Ugh.
I rolled a waystone with like, monsters have quicker attack speed and whatever, and I sort of forgot about that, and then I got to the monkey and he just ran at me and just bonked me, and it was like 5k effective HP just gone.
Oh god.
Yeah, so again, PTSD about the monkey. I recommend skipping him, but if you want to have the most like exhilarating like minute or two of gameplay, like go in there and see how it goes. I will say to your point about being close to him, so his like giant slam, the closer you are to him, it does more damage essentially. So like if you get hit by like the edge of the pillar, or like the little explosion of ground that happens, it does significantly less damage. But if you're right in front of him and he bonks you with that thing, it's gonna hit you real hard. So keep rolling, cheese him if you can, whatever you can do. Yeah. Oh man. All right, so level 77. That's pretty good, man, for your first character. That's like actually really impressive. I think I died like 20 times to get to maps. Um, and your build for hardcore solo self-found was shield, molten, or was it the molten shield, molten wall build?
It was let me think. So it was kind of well, it's interesting because I went through like a shield warrior again. It was using magma barrier. Um
That's it. I
but
couldn't
at a
remember.
certain point, yeah, no worries. And sometime in Cruel Act 2, it made sense to switch to Giant's Blood. I found like a ridiculous two-hander and I had a bunch of strength. I was close to the threshold. And I think the two-hander that I found actually had reduced attributes on it. So I was like, all right, it was time to make the change because my damage was starting to fall off a little bit. When groups are taking two bone shatters to wipe, I'm like, okay, this is not how it should be. So that's when I respect into Giant's Blood. And yeah, I was just essentially just using honestly, Molten Blast into Bone Shatter was like my go-to to clear groups. Like Molten Blast with a two-hander, it stuns mobs like on one use, which is crazy. Like if you just use Molten Blast at a range, it splits up, it hits the ground and splits up, and it will stun everything. All the small projectiles will like cue things for stun, and they just run in there and Bone Shatter. So being able to prime things for stun before at a range and then just charge in and wipe them up is like it feels pretty safe to me, and that's kind of what I was doing.
That's really cool. I remember watching Quinn 69 do like an ethical like warrior build, and he did dual wield Giant's Blood with only Molten Blast, and he was just throwing these like projectiles all over the place. And it actually is a really cool
Right.
skill. It's one of the only like ranged abilities that like because they count as projectiles, right? Like one of the only
Mhm.
projectile skill that you get as a warrior. And it's just nice that they threw in sort of that like you know like that extra little bit of help that the warrior sort of needed at the beginning of the game, like using projectiles at range if you wanted to, and that's dope that you got like that far with that and transitioning out of that as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good skill, and I know people sometimes complain about the fact that you step forward when using it, but I think it's meant to kind of cue things up for Bone Shatter because the stun buildup is kind of wild, and then you step forward while you're doing Molten Blast, and then you use Bone Shatter and you step forward again, so it kind of helps you close the distance and get a little closer for that Bone Shatter. At least that's how it felt to me. And yeah, Molten Blast, like dual wielding two handers with Molten Blast is like it's funny because your attack speed gets reduced so much, but the damage is also, like, so amplified. It's really funny to me. That's like a big risk reward, like, kinda build in my opinion.
Yeah, I was in hardcore and he actually got pretty far with that build too. It was really funny to watch. So yeah, I guess like that sort of answers one of my questions is that you don't really look at like what's strong in the meta or what sort of combination of skills are strong in the meta. Would you say you're more of like an ethical like Path of Exile 2 player where you're like only fashioning these builds from your own creative standpoint?
Pretty much, yeah. Because I trust, like, myself to, like, because I experiment with all I'm playing warrior only, so I have all the time, I just experiment with all the different warrior skills, and I just go based on how they feel. I'm like, "Oh, this doesn't really do that much damage. I'm not interested in pursuing that skill," or I'll try different combinations to try and make it work, and if it just doesn't feel like it's working to me, I'm like, "Eh, whatever." And I just try my best to piece together, like synergies and things that seem like they'd go well together. And yeah, I don't really follow any guides. I mean, I used to be one of those people that would just like I would love to consume like all the content that I could to just like have somebody else make my character for me. I just want to be efficient and save time, and I don't care if I come up with my own. But now I do like dabbling. I like dabbling in different things and seeing if I myself can make one of those builds. And I feel like I have. I made a few decent builds. And yeah, it's just really fun experimenting. I trust myself to like find these different synergies, and I know what I want to do and what works for me. And even from the get-go, I kind of told you this earlier, it's like I saw the passive skill tree and I was like, I want to play a fire themed warrior. I don't even care how strong they are. That just seems cool. That's what I want to do, so I'm going to make it work. And I just took the steps to make that work and make it work like best I could. So that's kind of just how I approach it.
I love that, man. Anytime that someone gets into Path of Exile 2, that's the way that I recommend to them to get into the game is don't look up anything. Just use your own intuition to see where these skills sort of synergize together. And I think it's just such a fun experience. So it's great that you've sort of adapted that. You also seem like a pretty proficient gamer, big Dark Souls guy, so you probably know how to build characters and do all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So that's dope,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
That's dope. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about grinding gear games. So you know, they are a pretty interesting company. I think that in my words, I would describe them as sort of a ray of light in a sea of really sinister and dark game developers. And I do have a little bit of baggage when it comes to these game developers. One of them is Blizzard. So, as we talked about earlier in the podcast, Blizzard was like my foray into like gaming. They provided me with like the most memorable experiences. It sounds like they provided you with some of these as well with your stint in World of Warcraft and stuff. But over time, as they grew in size, as they released more titles and had more projects under their belt, they became, quite valuable and was purchased by like Activision and various other companies. But the quality of gameplay and the gameplay experience and the player experience, I feel like, was impacted quite significantly by that. So, what are your thoughts about GGG right now in this era of where they're at in the company, and how do you think that they're going to progress moving forward with the development of Path of Exile 2?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a big part of why I wanted to try out Path of Exile too. I mean, there was all this hype around it, but a lot of the hype was, a lot of what I read was kind of talking up GGG as a dev, and I was like, man, they listen to you. They will implement changes. They're constantly trying to like make the game good. They actually play their game, which is interesting to even have to say that. But yeah, they are. I was like, hey, these guys sound pretty cool. I am at a point in my life where I'm like, I value supporting good devs rather than like a polished looking game. So I would I was like, let's go for it. I mean, don't get me wrong, this game looks great, but I heard a lot of good things about the dev, so I wanted to check it out. And they've been great. They mess up every now and then, but they always like admit it, and they always like implement changes. They are trying different things out. So I do think that they are like a great dev team, like as you're saying, like in this sea of like kind of uncertainty. You're not really sure where a lot of devs do stand. And at the Blizzard example, dude, I mean, like back at there's the golden age of Blizzard, which everybody is familiar with. And I don't know, just over time, just I guess corporate ideals and marketing was more the focus at some point, rather than like gameplay and balancing. Like I played so many Blizzard games, and I've seen their philosophy to balancing things over and over again, to where it's like they must be aware of this. They just don't like care that the game is imbalanced. And to some extent, I can understand it, because I think it's impossible to balance certain games completely, to have all classes be equal or all whatever's to be equal. But they just don't care enough. Let me tell you, this is their philosophy. They let a class be overpowered, and they know they're overpowered, and they just let them have their time in the light. Then after a couple seasons or patches go by, then like, okay, let's take them down. We'll boost this other class up, and then they let that class have their time in the light, and everybody's like, oh, this class is so overpowered. Blah, blah, blah. How do you not see this? That I've seen that cycle so many times in all of the games, whether it's World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, etc. And it's like, I think it's just by design. There's like, we can't balance this game perfectly. We're not even trying to. We're just going to let each class be overpowered for a bit, and we're just going to keep shifting that around.
It's funny that you say that they have to be aware of it, because it would be ludicrous to think that they're like releasing this stuff and not being aware of it, which would make them just so incompetent at their jobs. So it's either they're very incompetent, or they're just like, let's let this class just be way overtuned for a little bit. Like, I don't know if you ever played
Right.
Diablo 4, but their newest expansion came out.
Mhm.
It released a new class, the Spiritborn, and the Spiritborn were just absolutely broken for like months. And they
Of
just
course.
they just never fixed it until the next
Of course.
patch came out. It's crazy.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah. So when it,
Yeah,
when did
yeah.
you when do you think that the golden era of Blizzard came to an end, in your opinion?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know if there was like a stark like note to it. It felt like it was like a pretty fast progression over like a period of time. I remember Ah, I think when I started seeing like microtransactions starting to bleed into World of Warcraft and some of their other games, into Hearthstone. I was a big Hearthstone fan. I played a ton of Hearthstone. I really loved that game. But I just started seeing like the signs over time, more microtransactions. Hey, how do we get these guys to buy card packs, etc. And it's like that over time. I mean, and this was right after, well, a time after Activision acquired them. I just think it was like a pretty fast progression, not instantly, but a pretty fast progression into that kind of stuff. And that's where I started being like, this feels different.
Absolutely. I'm gonna recommend something to you. Do you read books at all?
I do when I have the time. I'm currently reading through Journey to the West. We were just talking about Black Myth Wukong, and that's inspired by that novel. I was like, this game is so good, it's gonna make me read. That's how good that game is. So I got the book, and it's been a really cool book. It's hilarious, and it's really cool. It makes me like Black Myth Wukong even more, because they are like they implement a lot of stuff from the book very creatively. It's not just like, hey, here's a random reference. There are like game mechanics based around stuff in the book, which is really cool to me. So that's the book that I'm currently reading through. But I think I know what you're going to suggest. But go ahead and say it.
Tell me what you think.
So there was a guy who released a book about Blizzard, right? The inside inner workings of Blizzard. I forget, I can't remember the journalist's name, but they mentioned this. I think it kind of centered around Ben Brode and some of the other like players at that time. Am I thinking correctly? I can't remember the name of the book though.
I think you're on point. So, the gaming journalist name is Jason Schreier, and he wrote
Hmm.
a book called Play Nice, and essentially
Yeah.
it's a chronicle of Blizzard from the early inception and how it was created through the golden era into basically the downfall of the company, and it chronicles as well, its various purchases and when Bobby Kotick and Activision sort of took over. I think that you've already highlighted that you started seeing all these microtransactions and stuff like that come into the game.
Yeah.
So I think that you would find it fascinating, especially with like our shared sort of experiences through life with like gaming and also how impactful Blizzard was. I think it was, for me personally, it was just really cool to like see exactly like what went wrong in a company that I hold so beloved as well. So I'd recommend you read that after you finish Journey to the West if you're interested in learning more. It's a really, really great time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've actually watched. I think I watched that journalist do like a quick podcast with Regis Kilbin, another great content creator. But they talked one on one for a bit, and he goes over some of the stuff in the book, and it is just so funny because I also used to play Marvel Snap, and I remember seeing Ben Brode leave Blizzard and start working on that game, and hearing him talk about that situation was hilarious to me because it was kind of exactly what we're talking about. There was a decision where Ben Brode and his like team within Hearthstone, they made like a really fun game mode called Dungeon Run. And it was really fun. It was just a single player game mode. It was just fun for the players, you know. And they got flack because the corporate was like, well, how does this gear people towards buying card packs? They need to buy card packs, not spending money. What's the point of this game mode? That's where their mind is at, you know, like, hey, they need to be spending money. Why aren't you pushing them towards these card packs? So that was really interesting to me. And Ben Brode eventually, they started like kind of conspiring to leave Blizzard, him and his small team, to work on to found like Second Dinner or whatever it is, or to work for Second Dinner. I can't remember if they actually started it, but they wanted to make Marvel Snap. And whenever they were confronted about like their plans, like they would be mid planning about like talking about like, hey, we're leaving Blizzard. What should we do? How do we approach it? And like somebody who works at Blizzard who isn't in on it would ask them like, hey, what are you guys working on? What are you talking about? They would answer with Dungeon Run monetization, right? Which is hilarious to me. That is such a funny answer.
Oh, oh man. Do you think that this is sort of hypothetical situations we're talking about here, but with the massive commercial success that Path of Exile 2 was, with the, purchasing of grinding gear games, like Tencent purchasing grinding gear games, do you think that there is a world in which grinding gear games goes down the same route in some respects? Or do you think that they will hold true to their sort of like well respected and are very aware of gaming trends sort of attitude in game development?
That's a good question. I mean, I've only been following them for a short while, but from what I've seen, I really like the guys. You know, I see John and Mark talking on to so many different creators all the time, and they're always very transparent. They clearly really love the game and they love action RPGs, and that's what I really like about it. You know, a lot of times when I've watched like Blizzard people talk about different things about their game, some of it came off as like they're trying to sell you something or sell you on how good the game is, rather than these guys who are like acknowledging the problems with the game and what they're working on, where their thought process is at, et cetera. It just feels very different. I like the vibe is like way more genuine, I would say, with GGG. So all I can say is I like them so far. I really respect them, and I am like I'm in it. I'm in it for the long ride. So
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. It's funny because I didn't really know much about the company either until I got really into Path of Exile 2, and now I'm absolutely addicted, and they own my soul. But now I have started to like kind of develop this relationship with the company from an outsider's perspective, learning what they're about, learning how they sort of operate, and it just feels so like black and white from how like Blizzard has operated recently into this. Like they have to be aware that like all of these other companies are doing so many things wrong, and they're sort of like, whatever you're doing, we're going to try and like move in our own lane, which is very much in the opposite realm of things, which is, it's just so respectable. And so I do hope that they
yeah,
stay that way. I think that one of the major considerations is the people who are at the helm of the company. So I know that Jonathan Rogers has been basically at the helm of the company with that other fellow who just recently resigned. So um, do you remember
right.
his name? I can't remember his name for the life of me, and
I can't remember his name either, but
I
I do
should,
remember. I
I
do
should,
remember him leaving.
I should know this. Again, I'm not like a super big like PoE one guy, and I know that he was very much
Mm,
responsible for like developing that game. But I really like like Mark and Jonathan, sort of their dynamic. It just seems like it's sort of like good cop, bad cop. Like they balance each other out in a lot of ways. Like in certain situations, in the Zizarin interview that he just did with the two fellas, it seemed like Jonathan was getting very like emotionally sort of distraught by some of the questions that Zizarin was asking, and Mark was just sort of there to like balance him out, like sort of there to like provide like another like alternative aspect. And I don't know if you know this, but Mark actually joined the company as like a tester, so he like played the game, like
yeah.
was paid to play the game basically. So the man knows his stuff. It's like no better person really to be developing games than the players who are actually playing them, right?
For sure. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I remember that's such that interview is so interesting to me because uh, John, he just struck me as a little like he was just a little grumpy. I was watching it and Zarin was coming up with some pretty good questions, and some of it I was like, I could kind of see John's point of view in some ways, and being annoyed because some people are kind of, Zarin was giving like personal anecdotes of other players, like their own personal experiences, which are valid, but that doesn't mean every player has experienced exactly what they're talking about. So John was always trying to bring up these counterpoints, but he was just kind of coming off like a little defensive, maybe a little contrarian, I would say. That's like the vibe was a little weird. But yeah, like you said, Mark was kind of there as like the mediator, the assuager. He was a really good, like, I just like every time he spoke, the vibes felt like pretty good. He's like, hey, no, this is like how maybe you're right. You'd be a good middle ground. And eventually John like apologized at the end, and totally just total human reaction. I think it was overall a pretty good interview, but you definitely got the feeling, early on I was like, oh, he's grumpy. We're gonna get a lot of grumpy answers out of him. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's a good interview, and I think Zarian brought up a lot of good issues. There are some parts that I do agree with when it comes to John, though. He was saying that like he's kind of bringing up at some point like that there are some different types of players, people who want to like zone out when they're going through maps or something, and then kind of pay attention during boss fights only, and people who want to like be engaged the whole time, even during the mapping process, we got to be paying attention. And honestly, I mean, again, I'm a masochist. I like it to be challenging the whole time. I'm like going through maps, I'm like, oh man, that's why I like hardcore solo self-found, because I'm like, I have to be really careful. I can't just like approach this willy-nilly, I can't just go leap slamming in the middle of a bunch of like scary mobs. So like, yeah, I kind of see both sides a little bit. But yeah, again, I just think he was kind of interrupting Zarian quite often. I was like, just let him talk, let him finish the question.
Yeah, it was hard to listen to a little bit because you could, as you said, it felt like to me, and this is sort of me trying to empathize with Jonathan as much as possible. They had been crunching really hard to get this new patch out, and then the patch is just, so polarizing. Some people are liking it, some people are having, opposite feelings about it, and it just felt like it hit him like, it took a toll on him like emotionally. So then to follow up with a big interview right after the patch comes out with a lot of like pretty intense and like obviously very good questions. On a side note, I think this interview was probably like one of the best they've done. I think Zizarin did like an amazing job like representing the player base. But yeah, I just feel
Hmm.
like, you could tell he was like feeling the effects of like the general reception of the patch, and then Mark was just like, we'll get that fixed today, and if not today, tomorrow. Like absolute giga
Yeah,
chat.
or like, oh, I'm not aware of this problem, so we'll look into it or something, like, very neutral but totally reasonable answers. But at the same time, I don't know if Zazarian is a game dev. I'm not a game dev. I don't know if you're a game dev, but like I'm sure from John's point of view, they've like thought of a lot of this stuff before, and that's why I could see it being a little extra frustrating on his end, because he's like, well, we thought of this problem, we've gone through all these different solutions, and it's not as easy as just snapping our fingers, and because players will think that this solution is the right one, but there's so many other factors to consider. So I kind of see his point of view again, but it was just like the way he was like answering and the way he was interrupting. I was like, there's a more gentle way to do this.
Absolutely. Yeah. He definitely like, said at the end of it, like I woke up on the wrong side of the bed this
Hmm.
morning or something like that. So it was cool to see sort of that resolve and sort of a gentlemanly, a mutual respect ending, which was cool. Yeah, one
Yeah.
thing that I, I'm not a game dev either, and as much as I would like to be like, oh, you should just like take armor break out of the game and whatever. I'm sure that there's a lot of reasons why that has to exist, and like there are systems in play that would require, substantial work from somebody to actually have that happen. But one thing that also I've been super impressed with about from GGG is just the rate at which updates are happening, the rate at which
Hmm.
changes are happening. Again, coming from somebody who's consuming a lot of Blizzard titles, it felt like we wouldn't really receive these like monumental changes until like next season. Like we'll save that for next season. Oh, you want like a gem tab for your stash? Next season. But these guys are like on top of it. It's like it's just so respectable, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it isn't early access, so I guess they have to be a little more on top of it, and they have to try. This is the time to test things kind of rapidly, but I do respect it because they're targeting things that should be targeted, in my opinion. They are trying, they are tweaking things that should be, like looked at. So I do really respect that too. It is pretty rapid. I think even for early access, I played other early access titles, and I do like how they're doing these bigger changes and smaller hot fixes, but with still meaningful changes in them, like at a pretty good pace. I think of something again like a Blizzard game, and like I remember, I'll never forget this. This is actually when I quit Hearthstone because I was a huge Hearthstone fan, and I think a season. I could be wrong on this, but a season in Hearthstone lasted about a month. I think it must have been 3 seasons or 4 seasons straight that one class was top dog in that game by a huge margin. It was Druid, and there was just a combo that they would play. It had to do with the expansion that had the Denathrius card. They just had this ridiculously overtuned deck, and Blizzard just refused to touch that class for months. I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm done." I was just like, "Why are they still this strong? You guys are just gonna leave them like that?" Everybody is so confused. I wish I could see a chart to see how many people like quit during that era because people were pissed, including me.
Yeah, pissed enough to basically stop playing the game, which is the absolute nightmare of any game developer. So,
Yeah.
one thing, before we get into anything further, I wanted to check in with you. I should have done this probably about 10 minutes ago. We're at like an hour and 40 minutes. How are you feeling? How are you doing?
I'm feeling pretty good. I think we can keep going for a little longer.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, we'll probably aim for like the 2 hour mark. I think that sound good with me. It sounds good with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, let's go for it. Yeah.
Nice. So you mentioned early access. At the beginning of Path of Exile 2, they essentially nerfed a bunch of really, really strong builds. Nothing that had to do with warrior, so nothing of your concern. But there was like a build where if you're playing sorceress, you could just cast infinite comets, and it would just essentially just like broke the game. And so they took that kind of stuff out. But they've been
Yeah.
sort of a little bit less like I guess less implementing of nerfs, and they're sort of treating early access like a full release game with these new content patches and leagues. How do you feel about the way that they're approaching early access right now? Do you think that that's the right way to sort of like do little things and then big things later, or do you think that they should just be doing big stuff as the game gets developed further, like in early access?
I think like just by nature of what I know of game development, not being a game dev myself, like the big stuff does have to come like in bigger waves. I would prefer. I think I prefer what they're doing now. Like they're going to be more like when they implement a big change, they should be ready to hot fix things because they don't know what's going to happen. Right? I'm sure that players are going to discover things that they weren't aware of and things like this. Like I mean, for instance, in my most recent video, there was like a pretty brutal shield bash bug. I think you actually commented on it, where like if you are using the new shield bash to build up stun on a boss and then you heavy stun them, they look heavy stun, but they're actually not, and they just keep attacking you. I almost got killed by Draven when I was doing that. I was like, wait, how is he still hitting me? How did he just do that? I just see the projectiles fly out from like an invisible spot. I'm like, he's stunned over there, but he's attacking me from over here. So things like that, you shouldn't leave in the game till another big update. You know what I mean? So that I do agree with the pacing in that sense. Um, yeah, I mean that's what I would say about the updates. I'm satisfied with the updates, and overall, I mean, I really like the game, so I'm just excited for any changes. I'm like, yeah, yeah, go ahead, change the little things, change the big things, go for it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think that it's interesting because I've played a lot of early access titles, and there is this sort of stigmatism about early access where it's like, I don't know if you've seen the meme of like a guy with a ribbon, and then he's cutting the ribbon, and then there's just a giant cliff at the other side of it, and it's like we're like, it's a game, but there's not actually much to it. But with Path of Exile 2, it actually really feels like like a complete title for the most part. Obviously, there's missing content and stuff like that, but I think that with the amount of stuff that's there to do in the game right now, the way that they're handling their like updates and their changes and their nerfs on like sort of like a seasonal basis, I think makes the most sense for this game.
Yeah, I was going to say actually real quick because they did in the last big update, they did nerf a lot of things. They nerfed damage across the board for a lot of classes, in my opinion. But the thing is like there's a big outcry against it pretty quickly, and I do think it's because players were going through and kind of experience. They're like, oh man, this feels terrible. I do think there's some truth to that, but I wish, for me personally, it's like I want to go in there and like test it out and like experiment around to see if like these changes were warranted instead of just knee jerk being like, hey, this is wrong. You shouldn't have nerfed damage. It's like, well, maybe there's something more to this. I need to like play around with it a bit and see if there's a way around this or if this is like ultimately a bad decision. Again, I only play Warrior, so I can only speak from a Warrior's perspective. But it's like the reaction was quick to me. That's how I describe it. Like the negative reaction was very quick to me, and I was like, we should, it looks bad at first, but try it out first. They have something in mind clearly. Let's just see if it works out. For me, like for Warrior, it felt pretty good to me. Again, other classes, I'm sorry. And I think the biggest complaint that I had was just like, that they brought up in the interview was honestly just like how long some of the zones take, because some of them were pretty big. And I just hope that they, I think John said in the interview that it's like it might be an issue of like mob health or something, making the zones feel slower. And I'm like, nah, it's if you look at this jungle zone in Act 3, it's just big, and that's something that should be looked at and changed. So yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, again, just this, there's such a different like way to approach the game in like HCSSF, which is like the only way that I've played the game so far. But the zone scaling, I feel like in softcore trade, you're essentially just trying to beat the game as fast as possible to get to maps. That's the goal here. But in hardcore trade, you're like, or sorry, in hardcore solo self-found, you're like, oh, maybe I should just go explore over here so I can find an extra rare mob. That rare mob might drop me a currency that I really need to get 6 modifiers on my weapon or a new piece of gear or
Right.
something like that. So for me, when I was playing through the campaign again, I was actively like finding the next zone and then going back and like clearing everything around just to like maybe secure something that can help me survive a little bit longer as well. So I can definitely see like how these things affect each other in you know based on the perspective which you're playing the game. But I am excited to see how the campaign feels. I will definitely go through and try it again once they've like reduced the Act 3 zones. I think that that's going to be a super nice change for just getting to maps a bit
Yeah.
quicker. Yeah.
Yeah. I think objectively across the board, I think pretty much everybody agrees that some of those zones are just way too big, man. They don't need to be that big. And so it's like it was just funny hearing that interview, and I was hearing like them trying to argue against it, like, no, no, no. It's clearly these zones might have been designed for, with a like a faster like character speed in mind or something, but they're clearly just too big. Just slogging through them is just like I remember actually my first playthrough, I was just having so much fun. I loved it. I was just even just how brutal it was, not knowing the boss fights. I was just getting, I was getting decimated every now and then, but I was just loving progressing through the campaign. I loved Act 2, but I remember in Act 3, I was going through that jungle zone. I was just having a good time, having a good time. I was like, yeah, this is great. And that was the first time I was like, man, how big is this zone? I looked at the mini map. I was like, how big is this? Like, why does this feel like it's taking so long during my first playthrough? And that's when I realized, maybe it is too big, because I didn't think that any time before.
100%. I think I felt the same way when I got to like the drowned city and you just end up getting to that dead end after like getting through all the river hags and all the crazy shit that's in that
Hmm.
zone. And you're like, oh my God, like what's going on here, guys? Um,
Yeah.
so, talking about, all these different changes and stuff like that. Um, I wanted to ask you something kind of more specific, but I think
Mhm.
maybe I'll start off with a bit more of a general question. So, this is going to sound like a little bit of a basic question, but do you think that Path of Exile 2 is actually going to get released in 2025 based on the current cycle of updates and stuff like that that are happening right now?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Any
Like,
percent of copium or no?
I would say maybe 20%. But it's like for me, it's this. Like I see them in interviews. I see their passion. I see how willing they are to try and change things. They're listening to the community feedback, etc. That all adds time. And I think this is all going to push it back, in my opinion, which is fine, honestly. Like they're clearly just so passionate about the game. So I would rather, again, just take the time, push it back, implement, keep fixing things, and really have it like perfect before you release it, or as close to perfect as you can before you release it. So I do see them pushing it back, which is fine in my opinion. That's like what I expect. That's like most early release games these days. I feel like they they always get pushed back, so totally fine.
Yeah, so Jonathan said recently that 65% is what he feels like the game is going to be released in 2025, which seems very optimistic. I'm going to ask you something else. When do you see the game coming out? Like, let's just ballpark guesstimate. When do you think the game's going to be released?
That's a hard one to guess. But if I was a gambling man, which I am, I would probably say like So wait, what is the original release date that they're saying?
Like this year, like end of this year.
End of this year? I
Yeah.
would probably say like within the first quarter of next year, probably like towards the middle of the quarter. If I had to guess, like just judging on various pushbacks, probably first quarter of next year.
Oh, okay. I feel like that's still even optimistic, but I would be very happy if like I was gonna say for me, like I would expect it to get like a full year like of like delays basically until, or
Wow, that's a
yeah.
lot. Yeah,
Yeah,
because I expect delays, no doubt. But and this is I'm not a game dev again. I can't foresee like what other issues are going to pop up or what other things they have in mind. But just them trying to stick to their guns a little bit. I could see them pushing it back to like around then, like the first quarter of next year. We'll see.
for sure. It almost feels like, Jonathan had this sort of vision of the game getting released in 2025. If everything just kind of all the pieces sort of fell into place, like, hey, we got an update patch, Huntress comes out, bunch of new fixes, and then we don't have to do any more work with that, and we just move on to the next source of content. But what it seems like is like every time they add these new content patches in, and these new features and nerfs, like and stuff like that, there's so much more work that they have to do to sort of fix the game in that current state that it's taking away from the development of like, future stuff. Like I don't know exactly how it all works at GGD, but it just seems like they're adding more to their workload by like, continuously adding these things while also trying to balance these new things instead of like just getting the game done. You know what I mean? So that's where
You
I'm at,
know, Yeah, yeah. I feel like they probably have like a long list of things that they want to do, and I'm sure there's going to be tons of unexpected stuff that pops up and more ideas. But I'm sure they're going to hit like the broader strokes of what they want to do. Again, we've talked about Dark and Darker. I kind of lost a little faith in the dev team there because I thought the game was great, and it's probably still good to some extent. But during some of their updates, like there was a clear like focus on like tweaking these really small numbers for like PvP balance that nobody really cared about. And it was clear that a lot of their focus was going just into like switching numbers forward and, oh, wait, that's actually a bad idea. Let's switch them back. It's literally that simple. They would like try something and then next patch it would be gone. Try something, next patch is gone. They were spending all this time on these things that players were even calling out. They're like, I don't think this is a good idea. Don't do this. This is a bad idea. They put it in the game. Bad idea that they take it back out. And I was just like, over time, it was just like, that feels like my time is being wasted. So I just ended up kind of falling off in that game because I was like, these are really strange updates. Literally, like there's you played it, so you remember they always like implement the item role all attributes, and every time people are like, this is way too overpowered, stop putting all attributes in the game, stop trying to make it work. And they're like, okay, maybe we'll put on select items, and people are like, okay, that kind of works. On just rings and necklaces, that seems okay. Then next patch, like, hey, all attributes is back on chest pieces and other items. It's like, what why would you do that? You were in a good place, and then they're like, hey, we took all attributes out of the game again. It's like, what is happening? It's like that kind of stuff just kind of loses me a bit.
Yeah, that is a perfect example of sort of what I'm talking about. Dark and Darker there's so many dials that they had to turn, and so it almost felt like before they got the dials turned into all the right places, they introduced a new dial as well, and so that would sort of have to
Yep.
that would make them have to reconfigure everything and then adjust that dial, and then they would introduce a new class or something like that, and so it just seems like they as a game develops and like adds more content, it just feels like the workload of just balance and all that kind of stuff just has to it just get increased, and therefore I don't know. I'm calling it end of 2026 we're gonna see the game release. That's my call. That's my call, but we'll see. I
I'm
want
I'm
to be
hoping
proven
for
wrong.
earlier, but we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see,
I
man.
want to
Yeah.
get proved wrong. So we'll probably end off on a couple of last questions here. So what are some of the things
Sure.
that you're looking forward to the most in the game?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I am just kind of game for whatever they add in there. I'm a sucker for like more things to do in the end game. That's a big reason I got really bored of Diablo 4. We haven't really talked about, but like I played a good bit of Diablo 4 and I actually really liked the campaign. The game felt pretty good to play. It was really polished. But the end game for me was just so boring. Like it was a little too easy, honestly, like to just go through things that didn't feel like I was challenged or like engaged at all. And then for the most part, a lot of the end game stuff is just like, hey, kill this boss that has a really low chance of dropping this item. Oh my god, you farmed this boss for hours and it dropped the item. Now what do you do? I'm going to use this item and keep killing that same boss that just dropped the item. There's like nothing to do, at the point that I was playing, at least. I was like, this is like not really fun to me. So I fell off once I hit the end game. I was like, this is kind of boring. I played some of the other seasons and some of it was kind of fun, but again, I just like the effort that that this dev team has put into the end game, because I love just like the Atlas system and just seeing the map and just being able to like see, oh man, there's like a progression. I can like explore in this direction, node to node, or explore in this direction. Oh, there's the burning citadel. Oh, there's another citadel over here. It's kind of cool. I like that. That's like a, it feels like the game actually goes on rather than just like, hey, let's farm bosses over and over for items. So I really, really like that. I'm curious about like more of the end game systems that they're going to implement. I'm
Mm.
curious to see how they keep like perfecting crafting, because it's not great at first. I was a little too RNG in my opinion, but they're clearly taking steps to make it a little less RNG and a little, more targeted, which I also really like. So I'm curious to see, all the different end game stuff, and I think this is the best campaign I've played in any action RPG. So I'm really excited for the release of the next acts, obviously. And yeah, I mean that's like a handful of things I'm currently excited about.
Dude, I agree with you on so many levels on this. I was also a Diablo 4 player. I paid extra money to play the game
Yep.
early. That's how
Yep.
excited I was. Just an absolute sucker. But yeah, man, like it's funny. The end game in Path of Exile 2, from what I understand, was actually something that they slapped together in like 3 months before early access even came out. And take that endgame, which you just described as, having a lot of things to do, and then looking at the Diablo 4 endgame, which is that's the endgame that they on launch. Like that is the full game. It's like it's crazy how like we're only in point one in Path of Exile 2, and we already have basically as much or more content to do in the endgame that Diablo 4 even has to this day,
Agreed.
really. It's crazy, man.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, any sort of theories about what's going to happen next in the story? Would you do you where do you see Act 4 taking place if you'd had to guess?
That's a good question. I feel like there was a location mentioned, and I think I could be misremembering. I feel like a Redditor data mined something about Act 4, about that you are like essentially going to use like a boat and travel like throughout an archipelago. I think that's what it is, like a bunch of different islands, and like you explore them, and you're supposed to like gather all this stuff, which I thought was a kind of an interesting twist. I mean, for the most part, the acts are similar-ish enough, where you're like, hey, you have your safe hub area, explore, 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 portal back. Okay, hub, trade, etc. Do all this stuff. Disenchant, go back out there. Each act has a hub like that. But that sounds interesting to me. That to switch it up, where you have like a boat where you can travel around and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, I'm curious to see where that goes. And as far as acts 5 and 6, I don't really know. I mean, I don't know like what's coming up. If this like corruption monster, this beast we've been chasing the whole time, if the last boss of the campaign is going to be that beast, or if that beast is going to be saved for later, I have no idea. I'm definitely super curious, but I'm in the dark, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that one of like the biggest wow factors for me, there was a lot of them playing through the game for the first time, but was getting to Act 2 and getting on the caravan. I feel like when I got on the
Hmm.
caravan, I was just like, I had never seen like a moving hub in like an ARPG. And then the way that that hub sort of moved around and then the environments changed and stuff like that. So I think that implementing that more in the campaign is you just, it's just a no-brainer. You have to do it. It's just such a special thing. And I think you're onto something there with the corruption. I think that in my hypothesis would be like the Act 6 would be like everything is like corrupted basically. So the corruption is like taken over, kind of like how you have to go into hell in Diablo 2. Like you have to go into like the corruption basically to fight like
The heart of the corruption.
the heart of the corruption. Yeah, and then I think that would like translate pretty well to like the actual end game if they like tie all
Yeah.
that thematically in
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting. That's cool. Yeah, yeah, I thought the same thing too in Act 2, actually. I was like, this is the coolest like hub I've seen in like anything. Like a small moving town, it feels like, it's not that big, but it feels that way, I really like that. And even the stage right before you fight the Act 2 boss, the Dreadnought, just going on that was my favorite part of Act 2. It's so fun. Even just the little moment where you're riding up on your own little cart and they're like shooting at you before you jump on. I'm like, this is so cool. I haven't had this much fun or got this hype in an action RPG ever. It's like such a cool idea.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, that like the fact that they like tied in like the moving town wow factor, and then they're like, oh wait, but there's actually like a zone where you're gonna be fighting in, and like that's like
Yeah.
the lead up to this like epic boss fight. I mean, like, yeah, there's just so many really great things going on with the game, and I'm really optimistic. I think that like the game, it's despite having a bit of a a rocky last update, it's still in like a pretty good place, and I think that all the changes that were made were just for the betterment of the game as a whole. I know that we've been playing Warriors, so we haven't really been feeling the rough patches as much. Like people were talking about like
Yeah.
getting like rushed down by white mobs and like not being able to kill them, and I'm just like, dude, I'm bone shattering everything and everything's dying. Like,
Well, that particular comment is funny to me because for any other class, I'm like, and any other playstyle, I'm like, yeah, that looks like it'd be annoying. But as me, when I was playing through on my magma barrier build, I actually loved it when they moved faster and attacked faster. I'm like, you need to come to me quickly and let me block really quickly. If they're moving faster and attacking faster, I can kill them faster with my magma barrier. So actually, I loved that role on maps because I'm like, oh, they're just gonna run up to me and die, you know. So like a very very small example of that role being beneficial, but I totally get it. That does feel rough, I think, for other classes.
Yeah, my heart goes out to anybody who's like constantly having to like circle around these like crazy fast white mobs who don't do any damage and stuff like that. But on the ironic side of things, it's like I started the game off as Warrior, you started the game off as Warrior as well, and Warrior kind of just got dogged on as like not being great at end game, for various reasons. Mace skills weren't feeling that great. Armor was, in a place where it was just,
Ugh,
the most lackluster of the defensive layers. And so it kind
for
of
sure.
feels like, it kind of feels nice that we're like, on top right now in like a few different ways. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. Yep.
yeah, we'll see if it stays that way in the future. Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. All right, man. Well, we're pretty much at the 2 hour mark. So I think I just want to say, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast and being able to chat with you. I also wanted to give you a little bit of a sentimental note. So you were the first person that's ever shouted me out on a YouTube video, linked to my any of my videos, and so
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for that. I just started my like content creation journey a few months ago, so it was really cool
Mhm.
to see like you basically throw me out there, and it's been great like having that lead to such a great like conversation and like so yeah, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know you found like that tag or the fact that I tagged you and shouted you out like months after the fact or a month after the fact or something, which is really funny to me. But yeah, like I was just going through hardcore solo self found. I just had like Path of Exile 2 content rolling just on autoplay on YouTube. And then your video came on. I was like, oh, this guy's doing like what I'm doing right now. I was like watching it. You like caught my attention. I was like, this is good information. You have a cool vibe. I was like, this guy deserves a shout out because I actually got some good information from your video too as I was going through. And it was just cool too because you were confirming a lot of my thoughts too. You were going through pretty tanky as well on the Warrior, and you were having a pretty smooth time as well. I was like, this is like right up my alley. So yeah, you deserve the shout out. Definitely. I hope your subscriber count goes up more. Whoever's watching this, please subscribe to this guy. He is. Oh, wait, am I pointing the right way? Here we go.
This way, down this way.
Yeah, right. No, because your content, your editing is great. I really enjoy watching it. So yeah, I'm definitely a subscriber. I'm gonna be watching all the stuff you put out. I'm looking forward to it.
Yo, thank you so much, man. Yeah, I mean, like, getting into this within the last 3 months or so has been like a pretty great experience overall. I've met like, various people throughout the Path of Exile 2 community, and I just want to say, like, I feel like you hold that community to like really high standards. You're just like a super cool guy, super chill, and I look forward to meeting more people, hopefully like you in the community as I like continue this journey. So yeah, thank you so much again. At this point in the podcast, we're gonna get Lex to shout himself out. Where can we find you? And all that type of stuff.
Oh, sure. I mean, I make YouTube videos. You can just find me if you search Lexd on YouTube. I'm pretty sure my handle is Lexd TV. I'm pretty sure on YouTube. I actually haven't looked at the URL in a while, but you just search Lex. You look up Warrior stuff. You'll probably find me on YouTube. I'm making just Warrior videos all the time. That's pretty much all I'm going to be making. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
All right, guys. Well, yeah, if you're keen to see how a true warrior Giga Chad plays Path of Exile 2, make sure to check Lex out. He's also running some like really cool stuff with shields, new content. Like, it's really great stuff, man. So yeah, thank you so much again, and I will catch you in the next one.
All right, sounds good.
All right, have a good night, bro.
All right, see you guys.
Peace out, guys. All right, everybody, that wraps it up for this episode of the Passive Tree Podcast. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe for more PoE2 content. I have a bunch more episodes of the podcast lined up with some really great guests, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And until next time, happy blasting, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.